The Thunderstrike Riders made a fatal mistake at the Colorado Green Expo. Not knowing the scientists, they harassed monitored cartel toxin labs. In the next 48 hours, Dr. Sarah Viper Chen would demonstrate why her decade of infiltrating South America's deadliest chemical operations made her the last person any criminal should threaten. Before their reign of intimidation ended, she would dismantle a criminal empire, expose an international eco-terrorism network, and remind the underworld why crossing a former CDC operative means signing your own toxic warrant. Tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story moves you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow we've saved something remarkable for you. The autumn wind whistled through the solar arrays of the Colorado Green Energy Expo as Dr. Sarah Chen meticulously adjusted her presentation materials. Her hands moved with practiced precision over the sophisticated monitoring equipment, portable spectrometers, chemical detection units, and advanced air quality sensors that would demonstrate her breakthrough in detecting environmental hazards. But these same hands carried hidden expertise, bearing the subtle scars of years spent infiltrating and documenting South America's most lethal chemical operations for the CDC's covert Environmental Hazards Division. The Expo Center hummed with activity as renewable energy enthusiasts and environmental professionals gathered for the year's largest green technology showcase. Sarah's keen eyes, trained by years of undercover work, noticed the first warning signs, the Thunderstrike Riders' presence growing more aggressive throughout the morning. Their leather jackets seemed out of place among the professional attire and corporate logos, their movements carrying the distinctive patterns she'd learned to recognize during her years tracking toxic waste trafficking operations. Her secure phone vibrated, a special line known only to former colleagues from her CDC days. The caller ID displayed Raptor, her former field partner from countless chemical exposure investigations. Viper, we've got movement, running facial recognition through security feeds. The Thunderstrikes showing up at multiple clean energy installations across the state. Pattern matches previous eco-terrorism operations we've tracked. Something big is brewing. Sarah's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on her phone, the codename Viper echoing from her past life, earned through her unparalleled ability to infiltrate and neutralize toxic threats across 3 continents. "Send me everything," she replied, her voice carrying the deadly calm that her former teammates knew preceded precise action. Moving to her private booth, Sarah accessed the encrypted environmental crime databases on her laptop. 3 solar farms had been sabotaged in neighboring states over the past month. Local authorities blamed routine vandalism, typical criminal mischief, but Sarah recognized patterns. The Thunderstrike's increased presence, the suspicious timing, the law enforcement's peculiar reluctance to investigate deeply. Her years of conducting pattern analysis for high-stakes toxic exposure cases had taught her to trust her instincts. The expo hall's main doors opened as Marcus Rodriguez, one of her most promising environmental science students, rushed to her booth, his face flushed with concern. "Dr. Chen, those bikers. They're not just here to cause trouble. I overheard them talking near the hydrogen fuel cell display. They mentioned something about securing all access points and preparing for tonight's operation. When I tried to get closer, they spotted me and..." He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They knew my name, Dr. Chen. They knew I work with you on the new chemical detection systems." Sarah's tactically trained mind processed this information while maintaining her professional exterior. "Marcus, I need you to tell me everything you saw. Every detail matters." As her student described the bikers' movements, their particular interest in certain technologies, Sarah's secure phone buzzed again. This time it was Captain Lisa Zhang, a former Army Chemical Corps officer who'd never quite accepted the local police's passive approach to environmental crimes. "Sarah, we've got a situation." Zhang's voice was low, professional. "Just intercepted some chatter. Thunderstrikes are running something big out of the abandoned chemical plant on Route 16. Heavy vehicle movement, unusual security patterns. Department's been ordered to ignore it, but my contact says they're mobilizing for a major operation tonight. And Sarah, they specifically mentioned targeting breakthrough detection technologies." Sarah's professionally trained mind began formulating objectives, analyzing threats and calculating approaches. The abandoned chemical plant was defensible, remote, with multiple escape routes. Exactly the kind of location she'd assessed countless times during her CDC operations. But this wasn't some distant toxic waste operation in a foreign jungle. This was personal, threatening her life's work and her students. Opening a hidden compartment in her expo booth storage unit, Sarah accessed equipment that hadn't been touched since she'd transitioned to academic life. Specialized detection gear, protective equipment, communication devices, tools of her former trade, maintained with scientific precision. In her CDC days, they'd called her Viper, because she could infiltrate any toxic environment, document any chemical operation, and neutralize any environmental threat without leaving a trace. Now those same lethal skills would be turned toward a single purpose, protecting her research and her students from an eco-terrorism threat. The wind intensified outside the expo center as Sarah prepared for conflict, her movements precise and measured. The Thunderstrike Riders had made a fatal miscalculation. They thought they were threatening a simple environmental scientist, never realizing they'd crossed paths with someone who'd spent a decade infiltrating the world's deadliest chemical operations. By targeting her work, they'd signed their own toxic warrant. "I'm shutting this down," she whispered, checking her specialized equipment with practiced efficiency. The hunt was about to begin, and Dr. Sarah Viper Chen was about to remind the criminal underworld why CDC's covert operatives were the last people any environmental criminals should dare to cross. Don't miss out on more intense stories like this. Just ahead, there are 2 unforgettable tales waiting to be discovered. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next heart-pounding story coming tomorrow. Stay with us and let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from? And what would you do in Dr. Chen's position? Your presence means the world to us, and there's so much more to come. Now let's get back to how Dr. Chen plans to infiltrate the abandoned chemical plant. The dimming daylight cast long shadows across the expo center's solar array as Sarah Chen methodically accessed her specialized equipment. Modified chemical detection units, originally designed for identifying cartel lab emissions, would serve a new purpose tonight. Her hands moved across the gear with fluid precision, each motion reflecting the expertise that had once made her the CDC's most effective covert operative in tracking toxic operations across South America. The fall breeze carried a hint of industrial chemicals, subtle compounds that most would miss, but to Sarah's trained senses they told a story. The Thunderstrike Riders had been increasingly present at environmental conferences over the past month, their rough demeanor and hostile presence growing more pronounced with each event. Local law enforcement seemed surprisingly reluctant to investigate, despite mounting concerns from the renewable energy sector. Her specialized detection unit beeped softly, a sound she hadn't heard since documenting cartel operations in remote jungles. The air sampling revealed trace amounts of chemicals typically used in sabotaging green energy installations. Sarah's throat tightened as she recognized the signature mixture. She'd encountered it before, during a CDC operation that had exposed an international network of environmental terrorism. Her tactical phone vibrated again, Raptor's number flashing on the secure display. "Viper, you need to see this." Running chemical analysis through the satellite thermal imaging near the expo center. 2 unmarked trucks showing heat signatures consistent with improperly stored reactive compounds. Matches the patterns we've seen in previous eco-terrorism operations. They're staged less than a mile from your position. Sarah's hand gripped the detection unit, memories flooding back of countless operations tracking toxic threats across remote territories. The name Viper had been earned through her uncanny ability to sense chemical threats others missed, combined with a lethal efficiency in documenting and neutralizing environmental hazards. "Upload everything to my secure server," she replied, her voice carrying the measured calm that preceded precise action. Moving to her monitoring station, Sarah pulled up the regional environmental incident reports. 3 major sabotage operations had targeted renewable energy installations in the past 2 months. Local authorities dismissed them as random vandalism, but Sarah's trained eye recognized sophisticated patterns. The chemical signatures, the timing of attacks, and the professional precision all pointed to organized eco-terrorism. The expo hall's emergency exit opened quietly, as Dr. Kimberly Park, her research partner in developing new detection technologies, hurried to her position. Her face showed controlled concern. "Sarah, the Thunderstrikes. They're not just here for intimidation. I found traces of chemical residue near their bikes, the same compounds we've been developing detection protocols for. When I tried to get closer readings, one of them appeared out of nowhere. He knew details about our research that aren't public yet." Sarah's mind processed this intelligence while maintaining her professional demeanor. "Kim, walk me through exactly what you found. Chemical composition, concentration levels, everything." As her colleague described the technical details, Sarah's secure phone buzzed with an incoming message from Captain Zhang. "Sarah, this goes deeper than we thought." Zhang's voice carried measured urgency. "Just intercepted communications about a major operation planned for the expo. My sources indicate the Thunderstrikes are working with someone bigger. They're calling them the Catalyst, some kind of eco-terrorism coordinator. They're not just targeting your presentation. They're after all the new detection technology being showcased tonight." Sarah's extensively trained mind began analyzing potential scenarios, calculating chemical dispersal patterns, and mapping likely attack vectors. The Expo Center's layout, which she'd originally assessed for optimal placement of detection equipment, now revealed itself as a tactical challenge. Multiple entry points, complex ventilation systems, and crowds of civilian scientists created a volatile situation that required precise handling. Opening her specialized laptop, Sarah accessed environmental monitoring systems that hadn't been activated since her CDC operations. Real-time chemical detection networks, atmospheric analysis tools, and pattern recognition software, equipment that had helped her expose dozens of toxic operations across 3 continents. On covert assignments, they'd called her Viper because she could track any chemical signature, infiltrate any facility, and document any environmental crime without leaving a trace. The autumn wind grew stronger, carrying more distinct traces of industrial chemicals as Sarah prepared her countermeasures. Her movements were precise, each action guided by years of experience neutralizing environmental threats. The Thunderstrike Riders had made a grave error in judgment. They thought they were intimidating an academic researcher, never realizing they'd crossed paths with someone who'd spent a decade bringing down the world's most dangerous toxic operations. "I'm coming for you," she whispered, calibrating her detection equipment with practiced efficiency. The operation was about to begin, and Dr. Sarah Viper Chen was about to demonstrate why the CDC's Covert Environmental Hazards Division operators were the last people any eco-terrorist should dare to provoke. The gathering darkness would conceal her movements, and her expertise would become their undoing. The darkness of Sarah's private monitoring station took on new significance as she accessed a hidden compartment beneath her research equipment. A decade in the CDC's Covert Environmental Hazards Division had taught her the value of maintaining specialized detection caches. As her hands moved over familiar equipment, memories of countless toxic operations filtered through her mind, each one adding to the lethal skill set she was about to unleash. "Viper, satellite imagery confirms increased activity at the chemical plant." Raptor's voice crackled through her encrypted communicator. "Thermal scanning shows multiple structures being used. Main concentration in the eastern building. Chemical signature analysis suggests they're preparing for a major dispersal event tonight." Sarah processed this intelligence while methodically checking her equipment. Her scientific expertise had proven invaluable in maintaining her specialized detection gear over the years, skills that translated seamlessly between analyzing environmental hazards and tracking toxic threats. Each piece was meticulously calibrated, ready for the moment she might need them again. Captain Zhang's voice joined the encrypted channel. "Sarah, got more intel from my source. The Thunderstrikes aren't just local eco-terrorists anymore. Past 8 months, they've established connections with international extremist groups. The chemical plant is their main staging area. But there's something bigger happening. They're coordinating a synchronized attack on multiple green energy installations. Your expo is just one target." The veteran operative's hands paused momentarily over her atmospheric sampling unit, absorbing this information. The Thunderstrikes had evolved from typical environmental criminals into something more dangerous, more organized, It explained their growing boldness, the lack of local law enforcement intervention, the sophisticated chemical signatures she'd detected. They had resources, protection, and professional-grade hazardous materials. "Raptor, I need everything you can get on their command structure," Sarah instructed, her voice carrying the same measured calm that had made her legendary during high-stakes operations. "Focus on any connections to known eco-terrorist cells. These guys are too well-equipped for amateur extremists." Kimberly Park's voice trembled slightly as she conveyed more information through the secondary comm channel. "Dr. Chen, I've been analyzing the chemical traces from their equipment. There's this unique signature that started appearing about 3 weeks ago. I ran it through our advanced detection protocols. It's sophisticated, engineered specifically to disable renewable energy systems. They've been testing it at smaller installations, calibrating the formula for maximum damage." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The new generation of environmental scientists understood chemical warfare in ways her CDC teammates never had. Their instinctive grasp of molecular analysis added crucial intelligence-gathering capabilities to her tactical arsenal. "Good work, Kim. Send everything to Raptor for analysis. Any patterns in their dispersal methods?" Her tactical phone displayed incoming data as she continued her methodical preparation. The Thunderstrikes had transformed the chemical plant into a fortress, but Sarah had spent her career breaching supposedly secure, toxic operations. Her experienced eyes analyzed approach vectors, identifying vulnerabilities that others might miss. Their security protocols showed professional influence, but they had critical weaknesses, overconfidence chief among them. "Viper, you need to see this." Raptor's voice carried renewed urgency. "Just intercepted communications between the chemical plant and someone called the Catalyst. Environmental science background, former EPA investigator, discharged under suspicious circumstances. They've been providing technical expertise and coordinating eco-terrorist cells. The Thunderstrikes are their latest project." Sarah absorbed this information while making final adjustments to her detection equipment. The presence of a former EPA investigator complicated things, but it also provided insight into their chemical operations. She'd trained alongside EPA teams, knew their methodologies, their strengths, and more importantly, their weaknesses. Captain Zhang's voice returned, more urgent now. "Sarah, department just got orders from above. We're being told to maintain distance from Route 16 tonight. No patrols, no response to calls from that area. Someone's clearing the board for whatever the Thunderstrikes have planned." Outside, the autumn wind intensified, providing natural cover for what would come next. Sarah's scientific knowledge combined with her CDC training created a deadly synthesis, understanding both the chemical and tactical aspects of what she would face. She could track their compounds, neutralize their agents, and turn their own expertise against them. "Viper, team is in position." A new voice joined the encrypted channel, another former teammate positioned to provide overwatch. "We've got chemical sensors on all approaches. These guys have regular patrol patterns, predictable dispersal points. Sloppy. They're not ready for what's coming." Sarah performed one final equipment check, each movement precise and practiced. The Thunderstrikes had made a fundamental mistake in their calculations. They saw the Expo as their territory, a soft target they could dominate through chemical intimidation. They never considered they'd crossed paths with someone who had hunted the world's deadliest toxic operations across 5 continents. "Time to go to work," Sarah whispered, securing her tactical loadout. The research station that had been her sanctuary in civilian life now served as the launching point for an operation more personal than any she'd undertaken in her CDC career. The Expo's scientists were counting on her, and Dr. Sarah "Viper" Chen was about to remind these eco-terrorists why environmental hazards operatives were considered the apex predators in any contaminated environment they chose to hunt. The abandoned chemical plant's perimeter loomed through the evening haze as Sarah Chen conducted her final reconnaissance. 2 decades of analyzing environmental hazards had given her an intimate understanding of industrial facilities, knowledge that would prove lethal when combined with her CDC training. From her concealed position, she could identify the weaknesses in their operation: improperly stored chemicals, predictable ventilation patterns, and overconfidence in their territorial control. Viper chemical detection arrays show multiple hotspots in the main building, Raptor reported through the encrypted channel. They're concentrating their compounds in the central lab, suggesting they're preparing for a major dispersal operation. The catalyst is on site, coordinating the mixing procedures. Intercepted communications indicate they're implementing advanced containment protocols. Sarah processed this intelligence while observing the facility's air handling system. Her scientific expertise revealed vulnerabilities that others might miss: compromised filtration units, critical chemical storage mistakes, and ventilation systems operating on outdated firmware. These technical oversights would become tactical advantages. Captain Zhang's voice carried measured urgency through the comm unit. Sarah, my CI just confirmed they're synthesizing their agents tonight. Multiple transport containers are being prepared. The catalyst's presence suggests this is bigger than their usual operations. They've got some kind of coordinated attack planned to coincide with the Expo's main presentation. The clinical way they discussed environmental devastation made Sarah's professionally hardened heart turn to ice, but her movements remained precisely controlled as she began her approach. The Thunderstrikes had established textbook perimeter security, but their reliance on intimidation betrayed their inexperience with truly determined opposition. Dr. Chen, Kimberly's voice whispered through the secondary channel. I've accessed more of their chemical data. They're using sophisticated masking agents, but there's a pattern. The catalyst has been coordinating with international contacts, multiple references to simultaneous strikes and cascading environmental impacts. Your detection protocols were flagged in their system weeks ago. Sarah allowed this information to fuel her cold focus as she moved through the shadows. Her years studying environmental threats had taught her to see patterns that others missed: how compounds interacted, where contamination could cascade, and most importantly, how to exploit vulnerabilities with surgical precision. Viper team reporting multiple vehicles approaching from the south, another former teammate announced. High-grade transport containers, professional hazmat configuration. Looks like your buyers are arriving ahead of schedule. Lightning illuminated the compound as Sarah reached her first objective. The facility's main ventilation control panel was supposedly secured, but its maintenance log showed signs of negligence, corrosion damage that would compromise its integrity. Her scientific knowledge guided her hands as she bypassed the security system, creating a weakness that would cascade through their entire containment network. Sir, perimeter sensors are showing anomalies, a Thunderstrike operator reported through intercepted communications. Could be atmospheric interference, but the catalyst wants additional patrols deployed. Sarah smiled coldly in the darkness. The catalyst's professional paranoia was warranted, but it would work against them. Increased patrols meant more predictable patterns, more opportunities for exploitation. The wind intensified as she prepared her next move, each action calculated for maximum effect. Viper, be advised. Raptor's voice carried new urgency. Facial recognition confirms the catalyst's identity. Former EPA Hazardous Waste Investigation Unit, specialized in tracking international chemical disposal operations. They're implementing containment procedures we've seen in high-risk facilities. These aren't standard eco-terrorists anymore. Sarah acknowledged silently while continuing her methodical infiltration. The catalyst's environmental background explained the sophisticated chemical measures, but it also revealed inherent biases in their defensive strategy. They were prepared for conventional threats, not for someone who combined elite CDC training with intimate knowledge of chemical operations. Sarah, multiple containers just entered the compound, Captain Zhang reported. The catalyst is on site. My CI says there's some kind of international coordinator, deals in environmental sabotage. They're gathering their compounds for final mixing. Weather conditions tonight are perfect for maximum dispersal. The veteran's hands moved with practiced efficiency as she created her entry point. Years of precision environmental analysis translated seamlessly into tactical operations, each movement exact, each modification precise. The Thunderstrikes had fortified their position effectively, but they hadn't counted on facing someone who could turn their own chemical systems against them. Viper team has eyes on the main building, her former teammate confirmed. The catalyst is implementing a rotating security pattern. Professional grade, but there's a gap in their coverage. They're focusing on external threats, leaving internal vulnerabilities. Sarah completed her preparations as thunder rolled overhead. The compound's containment systems were about to experience a cascade of carefully engineered failures, ventilation malfunctions, pressure fluctuations, and monitoring disruptions that would create opportunities for exploitation. The Thunderstrikes were about to learn that their sophisticated operation had a critical weakness. They had never faced an opponent who could dismantle their defenses from the inside out. "Time to introduce some chemical chaos," Sarah whispered as she initiated her breach. The storm would mask her movements, and her expertise would transform their fortress into a trap. The environmental scientists at the expo were counting on her, and Dr. Sarah Viper Chen was about to demonstrate why combining scientific knowledge with CDC training created one of the deadliest skill sets on Earth. The hunt was entering its critical phase, and the Thunderstrikes were about to discover that their sophisticated security meant nothing against an operative who could break down any system, chemical or tactical, with lethal precision. The chemical plant's main structure loomed before Sarah like a fortress from her CDC days, its weathered walls illuminated by emergency containment lights. Her enhanced detection equipment revealed the sophisticated hazmat measures the catalyst had implemented: chemical sensors, pressure monitors, and professional operators maintaining disciplined patrol patterns. But Sarah's scientific expertise had already identified the system's fatal flaw: their over-reliance on automated containment protocols. "Viper, the catalyst is conducting final synthesis," Raptor reported through encrypted communications. "They've gathered all compounds in the main processing area. Thermal analysis shows multiple reaction vessels at critical temperature. Confirmed visual on their dispersal equipment, they're keeping the primary formula isolated from the others, designated as breakthrough package." Sarah's hand tightened imperceptibly on her detection gear, but her movements remained precisely controlled as she initiated her first calculated strike. Years of environmental science research guided her actions as she accessed the compound's primary ventilation junction. The Thunderstrikes had installed military-grade chemical containment systems, but they hadn't properly maintained the fundamental infrastructure supporting them. "Dr. Chen," Kimberly's voice carried controlled urgency through the secure channel, "I've decoded more of their chemical data. The catalyst has specific targets already arranged. They're accelerating their timeline because of increased EPA attention in neighboring states. The Expo's detection technology presentation is scheduled for immediate sabotage." Captain Zhang's voice joined the tactical network. "Sarah, my CI confirms they're implementing dispersal protocols. Multiple containers being prepared. Professional handlers with hazmat training. The catalyst is personally coordinating containment for the transfer. They're not taking any chances." Sarah proceeded with scientific precision as she created the first disruption. Her intimate knowledge of chemical systems allowed her to initiate a cascading failure that would appear natural, a consequence of poor maintenance rather than deliberate sabotage. The compound's containment lights flickered ominously as her modifications took effect. "Sir, we're experiencing pressure fluctuations," a Thunderstrike operator reported through intercepted communications. "Backup containment systems are engaging, but there's something wrong with the transfer protocols. Chemical sensors are cycling unpredictably." The catalyst's voice cut through the radio chatter, carrying the sharp edge of professional concern. "Implement manual containment protocols. This doesn't feel random. Check all sectors. Maintain visual confirmation of all access points." Sarah allowed herself a cold smile as she moved through the shadows. The catalyst's environmental experience made them appropriately paranoid, but their focus on external threats left them vulnerable to an opponent who understood both tactical and chemical warfare. As the compound's containment systems continued their erratic behavior, creating precisely calculated gaps in their defensive coverage, Viper team reporting increased movement along the perimeter, her former teammate announced. "They're shifting to manual containment protocols just as anticipated. The catalyst is deploying their reserve forces to compensate for the technical failures." Lightning illuminated the compound as Sarah reached her secondary objective. The facility's chemical monitoring hub was supposedly hardened against interference, but her scientific knowledge revealed critical vulnerabilities in their setup. Years of analyzing complex environmental systems had taught her how to create technical failures that would appear coincidental while serving precise tactical purposes. Viper, be advised. Raptor's voice carried new intelligence. The catalyst is accelerating the synthesis process. They're preparing the first batch for dispersal. Your expo presentation is designated for the second wave. The catalyst has assigned their most experienced operators to the delivery team. Sarah acknowledged while continuing systematic disruption of their operations. Each chemical failure she engineered served multiple tactical purposes, degrading their containment capabilities while forcing them to reveal their defensive priorities. The Thunderstrikes had created a sophisticated eco-terrorism operation, but they had never faced an opponent who could weaponize their own infrastructure against them. Sarah, multiple containers are being positioned for rapid deployment, Captain Zhang reported. They're implementing professional dispersal procedures. These aren't amateur handlers. They've got specialized training for hazardous materials transport. Thunder rolled overhead as Sarah completed her preparations for the main breach. The compound's chemical containment systems were now operating at reduced efficiency, their backup protocols compromised by seemingly random technical failures. The Thunderstrike's professional security teams maintained their discipline, but their defensive posture had been subtly undermined by cascading system malfunctions. Viper team confirms target position, her former teammate reported. Primary compounds are being moved toward the transport staging area. The catalyst has concentrated their most experienced operators around the breakthrough formula. They're preparing for immediate dispersal. Sarah moved like a shadow through the compromised facility, each step bringing her closer to their chemical stockpile. The Thunderstrikes had created an impressive criminal operation, but they had made a critical mistake. They never considered that their sophisticated containment systems could become weapons in the hands of someone who understood both their chemical and tactical vulnerabilities. Time to introduce some serious molecular complications, Sarah whispered as she prepared to breach their inner defenses. The storm concealed her approach, and her expertise would transform their security measures into liabilities. The environmental scientists needed her, and Dr. Sarah Viper Chen was about to demonstrate why combining chemical knowledge with CDC training created a uniquely lethal skill set. The operation was entering its critical phase, and the Thunderstrikes were about to learn that their professional security meant nothing against an operative who could dismantle any system, whether chemical or tactical, with devastating precision. The compromised containment systems cast irregular shadows through the chemical plant's corridors as Sarah Chen initiated her first direct contact with the Thunderstrike's security forces. Her scientific expertise had created the perfect conditions: failed backup systems, malfunctioning pressure controls, and unreliable chemical detection equipment. Now her CDC training would transform these technical vulnerabilities into tactical advantages. Viper, multiple hostile elements responding to system failures, Raptor reported through the encrypted channel. The Catalyst has deployed their primary response team to investigate the ventilation center. Secondary teams are maintaining perimeter security, but their monitoring grid is degrading. They're shifting to manual detection protocols. Sarah moved with lethal efficiency as she engaged the first security team. Her intimate knowledge of the facility's chemical systems allowed her to predict their movements. They would prioritize protecting critical containment infrastructure, following standard hazmat protocols. The first operator never saw the attack coming, a precisely applied combat technique rendering him unconscious before he could alert his teammates. "Sir, we've lost contact with Team 3, a Thunderstrike coordinator reported through their compromised communications. Containment grid stability is critical for dispersal operations. The Catalyst is demanding immediate resolution of technical issues." The Catalyst's response carried professional concern. Implement emergency protocols. This pattern of system failures suggests deliberate interference. All teams maintain direct visual contact. Trust nothing electronic. Sarah's cold smile was hidden in the darkness as she systematically eliminated the second security team. Her years of precision environmental work had honed her attention to detail, making her close-quarters combat techniques devastatingly effective. 3 more operators were neutralized with surgical precision, their tactical gear and communications equipment now assets for her mission. "Dr. Chen," Kimberly's voice whispered through the secure channel, The catalyst is getting nervous. Their internal communications show increasing concern about technical failures. They're talking about moving the primary compounds ahead of schedule. There's some kind of secure facility in Nevada, Zhang added urgent intelligence. Sarah, my CI confirms they're preparing for immediate evacuation. The catalyst has called in additional security assets, former military contractors with extensive hazmat experience. They're treating this as a tactical emergency. Lightning illuminated the compound as Sarah engaged her next targets. The Thunderstrike's security forces demonstrated professional training, but they were unprepared for an opponent who combined elite tactical skills with intimate knowledge of chemical systems. Each encounter was precisely calculated, using their own defensive protocols against them. Viper team reports increased movement at all access points, her former teammate announced. The Catalyst is implementing a tactical retreat protocol. They're consolidating forces around high-value compounds while preparing for emergency extraction. Sarah acknowledged while continuing her systematic dismantling of their security forces. The Catalyst's environmental experience was evident in their defensive adaptations, but it also made their responses predictable. Years of maintaining complex detection systems had taught Sarah that even the most sophisticated operations had critical failure points. Viper, be advised, Raptor's voice carried new urgency. The Catalyst has authorized maximum force protocols. They're deploying their veteran operators. These guys show advanced hazmat training. They're implementing professional containment defensive formations. Thunder rolled overhead as Sarah prepared for increased resistance. Her scientific knowledge had created the perfect conditions for tactical exploitation, failed security systems forcing them to concentrate their forces, compromised communications limiting their coordination, and unreliable pressure systems creating confusion in their defensive positions. Sarah, multiple hostile elements converging on your position, Captain Zhang warned. They're adapting to the technical failures, implementing old-school tactical procedures. The Catalyst has identified the pattern. They know this isn't random system failure. Sarah moved like a predator through the darkened facility, each engagement precisely calculated for maximum effect. The Thunderstrike's professional security teams maintained their discipline, but their defensive posture had been compromised by the cascading technical failures she had engineered. Viper team confirms critical development, her former teammate reported. The Catalyst is personally leading their veteran operators in a facility-wide sweep. These guys are demonstrating advanced containment breach protocols. They're treating this as a professional tactical incursion. Sarah continued her methodical advance, each encounter further degrading their defensive capabilities. The Thunderstrikes had created an impressive security operation, but they had never faced an opponent who could exploit both their chemical and tactical vulnerabilities with such lethal precision. Time to show them what happens when you combine environmental science with CDC training, Sarah whispered as she prepared for her next engagement. The storm masked her movements as she systematically eliminated their defensive positions. The Expo's safety depended on her ability to dismantle their security forces, and Dr. Sarah Viper Chen was about to demonstrate why she had been one of the most effective operators in CDC history. The operation was escalating, and the Thunderstrikes were learning too late that their professional security meant nothing against an operative who could exploit every chemical and tactical weakness with devastating efficiency. The hunt was entering its most intense phase, and time was running out before their deadly compounds would be ready for transport. The chemical plant's compromised security systems created an environment of controlled chaos as Sarah Chen pressed deeper into the facility. Through her enhanced detection equipment, she observed the Catalyst implementing increasingly sophisticated containment measures, veteran operators moving in coordinated patterns, demonstrating the precise movements that marked professional hazmat training. Viper, the Catalyst has identified your infiltration pattern, Raptor reported through encrypted communications. They're implementing advanced counter-assault protocols. These aren't standard security responses anymore. They're showing EPA emergency response level tactical adaptations, multiple teams converging on your position using coordinated containment and neutralization techniques. Sarah processed this intelligence as she prepared for increased resistance. Her years of environmental expertise had given her an intimate understanding of how systems failed under pressure. both chemical and human. The Catalyst's veteran operators might demonstrate professional training, but their reliance on standard containment protocols made them predictable. "Sir, intruder is displaying advanced tactical awareness," a Thunderstrike coordinator reported through their compromised communications. "Multiple teams neutralized, 0 alerts transmitted. This isn't standard opposition. Recommend immediate implementation of scorched earth protocols." The Catalyst's response carried the cold calculation of a professional tactician. Negative on scorched earth. The breakthrough compounds must be secured. Implement Formation Delta. Full-spectrum counter-infiltration procedures. I want every corner of this facility swept by veteran teams. Our opponent clearly has environmental training. Time to show them what real professionals can do. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile as she engaged another security team. Her scientific knowledge had created the perfect conditions for tactical exploitation. Failed communications forcing them to bunch up, compromised detection systems limiting their situational awareness. Each engagement was precisely calculated, using their own professional training against them. "Dr. Chen," Kimberly's voice carried controlled urgency through the secure channel. "The Catalyst is mobilizing additional resources. Their encrypted communications show multiple transport vehicles inbound, professional extraction teams with advanced hazmat loadouts. They're treating this as a major containment breach." Detective Zhang's intelligence added crucial details. "Sarah, my CI confirms they're implementing scorched earth preparations despite the Catalyst's orders. Multiple incendiary devices being placed throughout the facility. They're preparing to eliminate all evidence if the situation deteriorates further." Lightning illuminated Sarah's next engagement as 3 veteran operators attempted to flank her position. Their movements showed professional coordination, but they hadn't counted on facing someone who understood both the tactical and technical aspects of chemical warfare. The first operator fell to a precisely applied combat technique, while the second and third were systematically eliminated before they could establish effective fields of fire. "Viper team reports significant tactical escalation," her former teammate announced. "The Catalyst has deployed their elite security elements, former EPA emergency response operators showing advanced containment protocols. They're implementing systematic sweep and clear procedures." Sarah acknowledged while continuing her methodical advance. The Catalyst's environmental experience was evident in their defensive adaptations, but it also revealed inherent weaknesses. Years of analyzing complex chemical systems had taught her that even the most sophisticated operations had critical failure points, both in their equipment and their tactical procedures. "Viper, be advised," Raptor's voice carried new urgency. "The Catalyst has authorized lethal force protocols. They're deploying their most experienced operators. These guys show advanced hazmat containment training. They're implementing professional room-clearing techniques with overlapping fields of contamination prevention." Thunder rolled overhead as Sarah prepared for intensified resistance. Her scientific expertise had compromised their technical infrastructure, creating cascading failures that forced them to rely increasingly on pure tactical response. The Thunderstrike's professional security teams maintained their discipline, but their defensive posture had been systematically undermined by the technical chaos she had engineered. "Sarah, multiple hostile elements establishing defensive positions," Zhang warned. "They're adapting to the infrastructure failures, implementing old-school combat procedures. The Catalyst has recognized the pattern. They know they're facing a professional operator with advanced environmental capabilities." Sarah moved like a shadow through the compromised facility, each engagement precisely calculated for maximum effect. The Thunderstrike's veteran security teams demonstrated impressive combat experience, but they had never faced an opponent who could exploit both their chemical and tactical vulnerabilities with such lethal efficiency. "Viper team confirms critical development," her former teammate reported. "The Catalyst is personally coordinating their elite operators in a facility-wide sweep. These guys are showing advanced containment breach protocols. They're treating this as a Tier 1 environmental threat." Sarah continued her systematic advance, each encounter further degrading their defensive capabilities. The Thunderstrikes had assembled an impressive security force, but they had never anticipated facing an opponent who could dismantle their defenses on both chemical and tactical levels. Time to show them what happens when you combine environmental science with CDC training, Sarah whispered as she prepared for her next engagement. The storm concealed her movements as she systematically eliminated their defensive positions. The expo's safety depended on her ability to neutralize their security forces, and Dr. Sarah Viper Chen was about to demonstrate why she had been one of the most lethal operators in environmental hazard history. The operation was reaching a critical phase, and the Thunderstrikes were learning too late that their professional security meant nothing against an operative who could exploit every chemical and tactical weakness with devastating precision. The chemical plant's central processing area became a tactical battleground as Sarah Chen advanced toward her primary objective. The catalyst had transformed the space into a sophisticated containment zone, with veteran operators implementing advanced hazmat protocols. Their movements demonstrated the precise coordination that came from extensive environmental emergency training. Viper, the catalyst has established a tactical command center in the main processing floor, Raptor reported through secured communications. Chemical detection shows concentrated security forces implementing interlocking defensive positions. They've created a professional kill zone with overlapping fields of contamination prevention. The catalyst is personally coordinating their defensive operations. Sarah processed this intelligence while maintaining tactical awareness. Her scientific expertise had systematically degraded their technical advantages, but now she faced their most experienced operators in direct combat. The catalyst had positioned their forces with professional precision, using the facility's industrial equipment as cover and concealment. All units maintained defensive positions. The catalyst's voice carried measured control through intercepted communications. Our opponent is displaying advanced tactical capabilities consistent with specialized environmental training. Implement close quarters containment protocols. No one engages alone. Maintain team integrity at all times. Lightning illuminated the processing floor through broken windows as Sarah initiated her approach. Years of precision environmental work had taught her to analyze complex systems, identifying critical points of failure. The catalyst's defensive formation was professionally executed, but revealed inherent vulnerabilities to someone who understood both tactical and chemical warfare. Dr. Chen, Kimberly's voice conveyed urgent intelligence through the secure channel. The catalyst is mobilizing their transport assets. The primary compounds are being moved toward the loading bay. Their communications indicate final preparation for immediate dispersal. The catalyst's defense is buying time for their operation. Captain Zhang added crucial information. Sarah, my CI reports multiple heavily armed contractors converging on your position. The catalyst has called in their veteran operators, former EPA emergency response and CDC hazmat personnel. They're implementing advanced counter-infiltration procedures. Sarah engaged the first defensive position with calculated precision. 3 veteran operators demonstrated impressive chemical warfare skills, but they hadn't anticipated facing someone who combined elite tactical training with intimate environmental knowledge. Their coordinated defense faltered as Sarah exploited gaps in their coverage, systematically neutralizing each operator with lethal efficiency. Viper team confirms significant tactical developments. The catalyst has consolidated their most experienced personnel around the command center. These operators are showing advanced containment protocols. They're adapting their defensive procedures based on your engagement patterns. Thunder rolled overhead as Sarah pressed her advance. The catalyst's environmental experience was evident in their defensive adaptations, but it also made their responses predictable to someone who had spent years perfecting the art of tactical infiltration. Each engagement further degraded their defensive integrity, creating exploitable weaknesses in their formation. Viper, be advised, Raptor's voice carried professional urgency. The catalyst has initiated final defensive protocols. Their veteran operators are implementing advanced room clearing techniques. They're treating this as a top-tier environmental threat, showing sophisticated containment and neutralization patterns. Sarah moved through the shadows with predatory grace, each step calculated for maximum tactical advantage. The Thunderstrike's professional security forces maintained impressive discipline, but they had never faced an opponent who could dismantle their defenses with such systematic precision. Unidentified operator, this is the catalyst. A calm voice carried across the processing floor. "Your environmental capabilities are impressive. Perhaps we can reach a professional understanding. Our organization is willing to negotiate compensation for any perceived grievances." Sarah's response came in the form of precisely applied combat techniques that eliminated 2 more veteran operators attempting to flank her position. The Catalyst's professional demeanor cracked slightly as they watched their defensive formation systematically dismantled. "Viper team reports critical situation developing," her former teammate announced. "Transport vehicles are being prepared for immediate departure. The Catalyst's defensive operation is focused on delaying your advance while they secure their compounds for dispersal." Sarah continued her methodical progress through their defensive positions, each engagement further degrading their tactical integrity. The Thunderstrikes had assembled an impressive security force, but they had never anticipated facing an opponent who could exploit every vulnerability with such devastating efficiency. "Time to end this," Sarah whispered, as she prepared for her final approach toward the Catalyst's position. The storm masked her movement as she systematically eliminated the remaining defensive positions. The Expo's safety depended on her ability to break through their last line of defense, and Dr. Sarah Viper Chen was about to demonstrate why she had earned her reputation as one of the most effective operators in environmental operations history. The operation had reached its decisive phase, and the Catalyst was about to learn that all their professional security expertise meant nothing against an operative who could combine environmental knowledge with elite tactical training to create an unstoppable force of precise intervention. The final confrontation was approaching, and the fate of the Green Energy Expo hung in the balance. The transport bay transformed into a tactical battleground as Sarah Chen pushed through the Catalyst's remaining defenses. Industrial chemical containers and hazmat vehicles created a complex environment of cover and concealment, while the storm's intensity added another layer of tactical complexity to the emerging confrontation. "Viper, critical situation developing," Raptor reported through encrypted communications. "The Catalyst has initiated emergency dispersal protocols, multiple transport vehicles being prepared for immediate departure. Chemical detection shows breakthrough compounds being moved toward specialized containment units. The Catalyst's remaining veteran operators are establishing final defensive positions." Sarah processed this intelligence while advancing through the shadows. Her scientific expertise immediately identified critical vulnerabilities in their transport preparations. Rushed containment procedures, improperly secured mixing equipment, and hastily implemented safety measures. The Catalyst's professional operators maintained tactical discipline, but their accelerated timeline created exploitable weaknesses. "All security elements maintain defensive coverage," the Catalyst commanded through intercepted communications. "Our opponent has systematically dismantled our standard protocols. Implementation of Omega contingency authorized. Maximum force engagement permitted. Protect the transport vehicles at all costs." Lightning illuminated the transport bay as Sarah initiated her approach. Years of working with complex environmental systems had taught her to recognize patterns of failure, both in equipment and in human operations. The Catalyst's defensive formation was professionally executed, but revealed inherent vulnerabilities under pressure. "Dr. Chen," Kimberly's voice carried urgent intelligence through the secure channel. "Their encrypted communications show multiple destinations planned for different transport vehicles. They're splitting up their compounds to minimize risk. The primary formula is designated for direct deployment at the Expo. The Catalyst is personally supervising its transfer." Captain Zhang added crucial information. "Sarah, my CI confirms heavily armed escort teams assigned to each vehicle. These aren't standard security details. They're showing advanced hazmat transport procedures. The Catalyst has deployed their most experienced operators for compound protection." Sarah engaged the first defensive position with calculated precision. 4 veteran operators demonstrated impressive chemical warfare skills, but they hadn't anticipated facing someone who could exploit both tactical and technical vulnerabilities. Their coordinated defense collapsed as Sarah systematically neutralized each operator, using their own professional protocols against them. "Viper team confirms significant tactical development," her former teammate reported. "The Catalyst has positioned their remaining elite operators in defensive formations around the transport vehicles. These guys are showing advanced containment protocols, implementing professional counter-assault procedures. Thunder rolled overhead as Sarah pressed her advance. The catalyst's environmental experience was evident in their defensive adaptations, but it also made their responses predictable to someone who had spent years perfecting the art of tactical infiltration. Each engagement further degraded their defensive integrity, creating exploitable weaknesses in their formation. "Viper, be advised," Raptor's voice carried professional urgency. "The breakthrough compound has entered the transport bay. Personal security detail shows advanced protective formation. These operators are demonstrating top-tier containment protocols. They're treating this as a critical asset extraction." Sarah moved through the shadows with predatory grace, each step calculated for maximum tactical advantage. The Thunderstrike's professional security forces maintained impressive discipline, but they had never faced an opponent who could dismantle their defenses with such systematic precision. "Your persistence is remarkable," a cultured voice carried across the transport bay. "But surely we can reach a business arrangement. Every operation has its price, even environmental loyalty." Sarah's response came in the form of precisely applied combat techniques that eliminated 3 more veteran operators, attempting to establish defensive positions around the transport vehicles. The Catalyst's professional demeanor showed the first signs of genuine concern as they watched their security forces systematically dismantled. "Viper team reports critical situation developing," her former teammate announced. "First transport vehicle attempting emergency departure. The Catalyst's remaining operators implementing defensive delay tactics while they secure their escape routes." Sarah continued her methodical progress through their defensive positions, each engagement further degrading their tactical integrity. The Thunderstrikes had assembled an impressive security force, but they had never anticipated facing an opponent who could exploit every vulnerability with such devastating efficiency. "Time to end this," Sarah whispered as she prepared for her final approach toward the transport vehicles. The storm masked her movement as she systematically eliminated the remaining defensive positions. The Expo's safety depended on her ability to breach their last line of defense, and Dr. Sarah Viper Chen was about to demonstrate why she had earned her reputation as one of the most effective operators in environmental operations history. The operation had reached its most critical phase, and the Catalyst was about to learn that all their resources and professional security meant nothing against an operative who could combine environmental knowledge with elite tactical training to create an unstoppable force of precise intervention. The final confrontation was imminent, and the future of green energy technology hung in the balance. The mountain roads became treacherous battlegrounds as Sarah Chen initiated pursuit of the lead transport vehicle. Rain-slicked asphalt combined with treacherous curves created challenging conditions that would test both tactical driving skills and environmental expertise. Through her enhanced detection equipment, Sarah could monitor the breakthrough compound's chemical signature in the armored truck ahead, surrounded by professional security operators. "Viper, multiple vehicles deploying in tactical convoy formation," Raptor reported through encrypted communications. "Lead vehicle carrying primary compound followed by security elements implementing professional escort procedures. The Catalyst has diverted their remaining forces to secure their escape route. They're personally coordinating defensive operations from the rear vehicle." Sarah processed this intelligence while pushing her specially modified vehicle to its limits. Years of environmental expertise had taught her the precise capabilities of chemical transport under extreme conditions. The convoy demonstrated professional coordination, but their accelerated departure created exploitable vulnerabilities in their formation. "All security elements maintain convoy integrity," the Catalyst commanded through intercepted communications. "Our opponent has demonstrated advanced tactical capabilities. Implement maximum security protocols. Multiple route options are available. We split at the next junction. Secure the primary package at all costs." Lightning illuminated the treacherous mountain pass as Sarah closed distance with the convoy. Her intimate knowledge of chemical transport allowed her to predict their tactical options: containment system limitations on wet roads, stabilization tolerances during aggressive maneuvering, and optimal pursuit angles for their armored vehicles. "Dr. Chen," Kimberly's voice carried urgent intelligence through the secure channel. Their encrypted communications show multiple extraction routes planned. They're attempting to divide your attention by splitting their forces. The lead vehicle carrying the breakthrough compound is designated for direct transport to the expo. The catalyst has teams already in position. Captain Zhang added crucial information. Sarah, my CI confirms roadblocks being established on all major routes. Professional security teams are positioning for defensive operations. These guys are implementing advanced convoy protection protocols. They're treating this as a high-value asset extraction. Sarah engaged the first security vehicle with calculated precision. The professional drivers demonstrated impressive tactical skills, but they hadn't anticipated facing someone who combined elite CDC training with expert environmental knowledge. Their coordinated defense faltered as Sarah systematically exploited gaps in their convoy formation. Viper team confirmed significant tactical developments, her former teammate reported. The Catalyst has positioned experienced operators at key intersections. These guys are showing advanced roadblock procedures, implementing professional interdiction tactics. Thunder rolled overhead as Sarah pressed her pursuit. The Catalyst's military experience was evident in their convoy procedures, but it also made their responses predictable to someone who had spent years perfecting the art of tactical driving. Each engagement further degraded their formation integrity, creating exploitable weaknesses in their escape plan. Viper, be advised. Raptor's voice carried professional urgency. The Catalyst has authorized lethal force protocols. Their security teams are implementing aggressive counter-pursuit procedures. These operators are demonstrating advanced tactical driving techniques under extreme conditions. Sarah maintained relentless pressure on the convoy, each maneuver calculated for maximum tactical advantage. The Thunderstrike's professional security forces maintained impressive discipline, but they had never faced an opponent who could exploit both their tactical and chemical vulnerabilities with such systematic precision. Most impressive pursuit skills, the Catalyst's voice carried across their compromised communications. Perhaps we've underestimated the resource value of local expertise. A position could be arranged within our organization for someone with your capabilities. Sarah's response came in the form of precisely executed tactical driving maneuvers that eliminated another security vehicle from the convoy. The Catalyst's professional demeanor showed increasing strain as they watched their security forces systematically dismantled on the treacherous mountain roads. The Expo Center emerged through the storm's fury as Sarah Chen pursued the specialized transport vehicle carrying the breakthrough compound. Lightning revealed a professional dispersal operation in progress. Chemical sprayers with engines running, tactical teams establishing positions, and the Catalyst personally supervising final preparations under the harsh glare of emergency lighting. Viper, multiple hostile elements implementing professional dispersal security, Raptor reported through encrypted communications. The Catalyst has positioned their remaining elite operators in defensive formations around the Expo Center. Chemical detection shows advanced containment procedures. They're establishing overlapping fields of fire to secure their infiltration route. Sarah analyzed the tactical situation while maintaining pursuit. Her environmental expertise immediately identified critical vulnerabilities in their dispersal preparations, chemical stability limitations in deteriorating weather conditions, compromised visibility affecting security team coordination, and predictable defensive positions determined by the Expo Center's layout. The Catalyst's professional security forces demonstrated increasing signs of urgency as weather conditions continued to worsen. All security elements maintained defensive coverage, the Catalyst commanded through intercepted communications. Our opponent has systematically dismantled every protective measure we've implemented. Maximum security protocols authorized for final dispersal. The breakthrough compound must be deployed inside the Expo. No other considerations matter at this point. Lightning illuminated the full scope of their dispersal operation as Sarah initiated her approach. Years of environmental knowledge combined with tactical expertise allowed her to identify exploitable weaknesses in their position. Security teams hampered by deteriorating visibility, vehicle placement that restricted rapid response options, and compound preparation procedures that created predictable patterns of movement among their defensive forces. Dr. Chen, Kimberly's voice carried urgent intelligence through the secure channel. Their encrypted communications show accelerated dispersal timeline due to approaching weather front. The catalyst is coordinating with infiltration teams for immediate deployment. The breakthrough compound is being prepared for maximum effect. They're adjusting the formula for optimal atmospheric conditions during the presentation. Captain Zhang provided critical tactical information. Sarah, my CI confirms the presence of elite private contractors implementing professional dispersal security. These operators show advanced chemical warfare training and containment procedures. They're treating this as a zero-failure mission with extreme prejudice authorization. Sarah engaged their defensive perimeter with calculated precision. The professional operators demonstrated impressive tactical discipline, but they hadn't anticipated facing someone who could exploit both their defensive procedures and the environmental conditions with such lethal efficiency. Their coordinated security began to fragment as Sarah systematically neutralized key positions. Viper team confirms significant tactical developments, her former teammate reported. The Catalyst has committed their remaining veteran operators to final protective positions. These guys are showing advanced chemical warfare procedures, implementing professional containment protocols around the breakthrough compound. Thunder rolled overhead as Sarah pressed through their defensive line. The Catalyst's professional experience was evident in their tactical disposition, but it also revealed inherent weaknesses to someone who had spent years perfecting the art of breaching secured positions. Each engagement further degraded their defensive integrity, creating exploitable gaps in their final protection detail. Viper, be advised, Raptor's voice carried professional urgency. The Catalyst has initiated emergency dispersal procedures. Their remaining security teams are implementing maximum resistance protocols. These operators have been authorized for absolute commitment to secure the compound's deployment. Sarah maintained relentless pressure on their defensive positions, each movement calculated for maximum tactical advantage. The private contractors demonstrated impressive resolve, but they had never faced an opponent who could exploit both their tactical procedures and the environmental conditions with such systematic precision. Your persistence is remarkable. The Catalyst's voice carried strained composure across their compromised communications. But surely you understand that this operation extends far beyond local concerns. The resources aligned against you exceed any individual's capacity for resistance. Sarah's response came in the form of precisely executed combat techniques that eliminated 3 more defensive positions. The Catalyst's professional demeanor showed visible strain as they watched their final security details systematically dismantled under the storm's intensity. Viper team reports critical situation developing, her former teammate announced. Chemical sprayers beginning final preparation for emergency deployment. The Catalyst's remaining operators implementing last stand procedures while they secure the dispersal zone. Sarah continued her methodical advance through their defensive positions, each engagement further degrading their tactical integrity. The Catalyst had established an impressive dispersal operation, but had never anticipated facing an opponent who could exploit every vulnerability with such devastating efficiency. "Time to finish this," Sarah whispered as she prepared for her final approach to the expo center. The storm masked her tactical movements as she systematically eliminated their remaining security positions. The scientist's safety depended on her ability to breach their last line of defense, and Dr. Sarah Viper Chen was about to demonstrate why she had earned her reputation as one of the most effective operators in CDC history. The operation had reached its final phase, and the Catalyst was about to learn that all their professional dispersal preparations meant nothing against an operative who could combine environmental expertise with elite tactical training to create an unstoppable force of precise justice. Viper team reports critical situation developing, her former teammate announced. Convoy attempting to split at the next junction. The Catalyst's remaining operators implementing defensive delay tactics while they secure multiple escape routes. Sarah continued her methodical pursuit, each engagement further degrading their tactical integrity. The Thunderstrikes had assembled an impressive security operation, but they had never anticipated facing an opponent who could exploit every vulnerability with such devastating efficiency. "Time to end this chase," Sarah whispered, as she prepared for her final approach toward the lead transport vehicle. The storm masked her tactical maneuvers as she systematically eliminated their defensive positions. The Expo's safety depended on her ability to breach their last line of defense, and Dr. Sarah Viper Chen was about to demonstrate why she had earned her reputation as one of the most effective operators in CDC history. The pursuit had reached its most critical phase, and the Catalyst was about to learn that all their professional security meant nothing against an operative who could combine environmental expertise with elite tactical training to create an unstoppable force of precise justice. The final confrontation was moments away, and the fate of hundreds of innocent scientists hung in the balance. The Expo Center's main hall became the final battleground as Sarah Chen breached their last defensive line. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across the presentation area as the Catalyst's remaining security forces established defensive positions around their chemical dispersal equipment. The storm's intensity rattled the building's frame, creating an environment of heightened tactical complexity. Viper, multiple hostile elements implementing final dispersal procedures, Raptor reported through encrypted communications. The Catalyst has positioned their most elite operators in close protection formation within the Expo Hall. Chemical detection shows professional implementation of last stand protocols. They're concentrating remaining forces around the breakthrough compound. Sarah assessed the tactical situation while advancing through the presentation hall. Her environmental expertise provided critical insights into the building's vulnerabilities, structural weak points, ventilation system limitations, and optimal angles of approach through the confined space. The Catalyst's remaining security forces demonstrated increasing desperation as their tactical options diminished within the restricted environment. All security elements maintain close protection positions, the Catalyst commanded through intercepted communications. Our opponent has systematically neutralized every defensive measure we've implemented. Maximum commitment protocols authorized for final defense. The breakthrough compound must be deployed at all costs. Prepare for emergency dispersal regardless of civilian presence. Lightning illuminated the Expo Hall's interior through skylights as Sarah initiated her approach. Years of environmental knowledge combined with tactical expertise allowed her to identify exploitable weaknesses in their position. Security teams hampered by confined spaces, restricted fields of fire created by presentation displays, and predictable defensive positions determined by the hall's layout. Dr. Chen, Kimberly's voice carried urgent intelligence through the secure channel. Their encrypted communications show preparation for immediate dispersal, despite the presence of hundreds of scientists. The Catalyst is attempting to coordinate synchronized deployment through compromised ventilation channels. The breakthrough compound's chemical signature is showing concerning reactivity with the current atmospheric conditions. Captain Zhang provided crucial tactical information. Sarah, my CI confirms the presence of the Catalyst's personal security detail implementing professional close protection protocols. These operators show advanced training in confined space combat. They're operating under execute on-site authorization with zero surrender options. Sarah engaged their defensive positions with calculated precision. The professional operators demonstrated impressive close-quarters combat discipline, but they hadn't anticipated facing someone who could exploit both tactical vulnerabilities and environmental knowledge with such lethal efficiency. Their coordinated defense began to collapse as Sarah systematically eliminated key positions within the confined space. Viper team confirmed significant tactical developments, her former teammate reported. The Catalyst has committed their remaining veteran operators to final protective formations. These guys are showing advanced chemical warfare procedures, implementing professional last-stand protocols around the dispersal equipment. Thunder shook the building as Sarah pressed through their defensive line. The Catalyst's professional experience was evident in their tactical disposition, but it also revealed inherent weaknesses to someone who had spent years perfecting the art of confined space combat. Each engagement further degraded their defensive integrity, creating exploitable gaps in their final protection detail. Viper, be advised, Raptor's voice carried professional urgency. The Catalyst has initiated emergency dispersal procedures despite civilian presence. Their remaining security teams are implementing suicide defense protocols. These operators have been authorized for absolute commitment to protect the breakthrough compound. Sarah maintained relentless pressure within the confined space, each movement calculated for maximum tactical advantage. The elite security operators demonstrated impressive resolve, But they had never faced an opponent who could exploit both their tactical procedures and environmental vulnerabilities with such systematic precision. "You've exceeded all operational parameters." The catalyst's voice carried barely controlled fury across their compromised communications. "But you fail to understand the true scope of this organization. The resources aligned against green energy span continents. This isn't just about one expo." Sarah's response came in the form of precisely executed close-quarters combat techniques that eliminated 3 more defensive positions within the expo hall. The catalyst's professional composure finally shattered as they watched their final security detail systematically dismantled in the confined space. "Viper team reports critical situation developing," her former teammate announced. "Chemical dispersal systems initiating emergency deployment sequence despite civilian presence. The catalyst's remaining operators implementing final sacrifice procedures while they secure the compound." Sarah continued her methodical advance through their defensive positions, each engagement further degrading their tactical integrity. The catalyst had established an impressive final defense, but had never anticipated facing an opponent who could exploit every vulnerability with such devastating efficiency in confined quarters. The expo hall fell silent in the storm's aftermath as Sarah secured the neutralized breakthrough compound. The catalyst lay detained nearby, their professional demeanor finally broken as federal tactical teams swarmed the building. Lightning illuminated the aftermath of the final confrontation, evidence of precise combat techniques and environmental expertise that had systematically dismantled an international eco-terrorism organization. "Viper, federal response teams have secured the perimeter," Raptor reported through encrypted communications. "Multiple agencies implementing professional evidence collection procedures. Preliminary analysis shows documentation of extensive criminal networks. The catalyst's operation extended far beyond the Thunderstrike's initial involvement." Sarah monitored the compound's containment while maintaining tactical awareness. Her environmental knowledge had proven crucial in preventing the dispersal system's activation, precisely targeted neutralization that had rendered the breakthrough compound inert without risking civilian exposure. Medical teams were already en route, their response coordinated through Captain Zhang's professional channels. As the sun rose over the secured expo center, Sarah Chen allowed herself a moment of reflection. The Thunderstrikes and the Catalyst had learned too late that targeting environmental scientists was a fatal mistake. She had reminded the criminal underworld why CDC's covert operative. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.